Hello, welcome to Learn Anatomy with Dr. Vessel, and today we'll be looking at the second part of the clavicle. Now, this part, our focus will be on the parts of the clavicle. The clavicle has three parts. It has the sternal end, the acromial end, and the shaft. The sternal end is the enlarged end of the clavicle, and it is quadrilateral in shape, and it articulates with the mandibulostenae. It is the enlarged end of the clavicle. It is quadrilateral in shape and it articulates with the mandibulostenae. While the acromial end is the flattened end of the clavicle and it articulates with the acromial process. It is the flattened end of the clavicle and it articulates with the acromial process. The sternal end can also be called the medial end. It can also be called the medial end of the clavicle, while the acromial end can also be called the lateral end of the clavicle. The letter E in sternal and the letter E in medial can help us remember that the sternal end or the medial end is the enlarged end of the clavicle. The letter L in flattened can help us remember that the flattened end of the clavicle is the lateral end of the clavicle. Now, the next thing is the shaft. The shaft has two surfaces and two borders. In our previous video, I told you about the shape of the clavicle, and we said it is S shape lying down. S shape lying down. And when the S shape is lying down, we will have the lateral 1/3 concave and the medial 2/3 convex. Now the medial 2/3 is bigger than the lateral 1/3 of the clavicle. Now the shaft of the clavicle has two surfaces and two borders. Surfaces are the superior surface and the inferior surface, while the borders are the anterior border and the superior border. Now, for the general muscle attachment of the clavicle, you can use this mnemonic PST-D. For the general muscle attachment of the clavicle, you can use this mnemonic PST-D. P for pectoralis major, S for subclavius and sternocleidomastoid muscle, T for trapezius muscle, and D for deltoid. So with this mnemonic PST-D, you can remember the general muscle attachment to the clavicle. P for pectoralis major, S for subclavius and sternocleidomastoid muscle, T for trapezius muscle, and D for deltoid muscle. Now let's look at the surfaces and the borders of the clavicle in a full scope. Now for the lateral 1/3, the superior surface is subcutaneous. It does not have any muscle attachment, so it is subcutaneous. When you palpate your lateral 1/3 of your clavicle, you can easily touch the bone. You can feel the bone. When you palpate the lateral 1/3 of your clavicle, you feel your bone. It is subcutaneous. While the medial 2/3 has a muscle or originates the clavicular head of the sternocleidomastoid muscle originating from there. The sternocleidomastoid muscle originates from the medial 2/3 of the superior surface of the clavicle. Now for the inferior surface, looking at the clavicle from under, when you go to the lateral 1/3, this mnemonic act can help you identify what you can see at the lateral 1/3 of the clavicle, lateral 1/3 of the inferior surface of the clavicle. And this act, what is the meaning of this act? Then E means acromial end. A means acromial end, which is the lateral end. C means conoid. C means conoid tubercle. Then T means trapezoid ridge. So ACT can help us know what we can see in the inferior lateral one third of the clavicle. That is, if you look at the clavicle from under and you're looking at the lateral end of the clavicle, this is what you should see. Now for the medial to third, what do you see at the inferior surface? With this mnemonic 2 CNS, you can remember what the 4 things you can see at the inferior surface of the medial to third. The first C helps us remember a ligament, which is called the costoclavicular ligament. The costoclavicular ligament is seen there. The costoclavicular ligament is seen there. The 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 next C help us to remember a fascia, which is called the clavipectoral fascia. The clavipectoral fascia. The next C, maybe I will say 2 CNS. The next C help us to remember a fascia, which is called the clavipectoral fascia. The next N help us to remember a foramen, which is called the nutrient foramen. And finally, the last S help us to remember a muscle, which is called the subclavius muscle. So when you look at the inferior medial to third of the clavicle, you will see these 4 things there. Now for the anterior border of the clavicle, the lateral one third, you get to see the deltoid, while for the medial to third, you get to see the pectoralis major. While for the posterior border, the lateral one third, you get to see the trapezius. While for the medial one third, you get to see the sternocleidomastoid muscle. And with this, we have come to the end of this section on the parts of the clavicle. I hope you learned something new in this video. Thank you for watching.